PM felt like home in that aspect where even when I'm like not an entrepreneur right now, it does feel a little bit like sort of trying to like figure out,
Mm-hmm.
and like more than like run a business is really about learning how to run a business because of
Exactly.
the exposure and like the interaction that I have to have with every function of the company.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of Product Unfiltered. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Ruturaj Eksambekar, a seasoned senior product manager at Lucid. With over 7 years of experience in the tech industry and a master's degree in HCI from Georgia Tech, Ruturaj brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to our conversation. Currently, Ruturaj is leading an exciting initiative at Lucid to establish the Lucid Marketplace on top of their developer platform. This marketplace aims to create a vibrant ecosystem of impactful third party and Lucid built applications, seamlessly integrating with customer workflows to drive even greater value. Prior to his current role, Ruturaj played a pivotal role in building Lucid's latest product, Lucidscale. From its inception to the recent launch, he has been deeply involved in bringing the power of visual reasoning to the world of cloud management. Join us in this insightful episode as Ruturaj shares his experiences, challenges, and successes in product management. Thank you, Ruturaj, for joining us for this episode of Product Unfiltered. We're glad to have you here.
Oh, thank you for that very kind introduction. I hope like the wealth of knowledge introduction, like we can live up to that in our conversation. But really looking forward to this chat. And thank you for
Thank,
having me.
thank you so much, Ruturaj. And actually, Ruturaj, before we completely dive into the product management discussion, we
Yeah.
would love to know more about this industry in which Lucidchart is currently operating in. So, if you can share what Lucidchart exactly is, what are some use cases which it solves for its end users, and what domain does it cater in, it'll be really great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great question. And yeah, just maybe just one clarification where like most of the people when I talk to, they know of Lucidchart as the flagship product. So that is one of the products that Lucid Software, the company, makes. So we have like Lucidchart, Lucidspark as like the visual, like the whiteboarding equivalent of it, and Lucidscale, which was the third product that you just briefly mentioned, right? So Lucid Software as a company, like basically it's a company that operates in this visual collaboration space. uh, Put simply, like one of the like mission statements that we have is like we help teams see and build the future. At its core, what it is we believe humans think visually. It's a lot easier to like communicate, like work on ideas and like get alignment when you see something as a visual than like huge chunks of text. And effectively we're trying to bring visual reasoning to the world of building software. Like currently the focus market is like knowledge workers per se. So think about any sort of work you do, like be it like a physical whiteboard that we used to use in like all the way from like classes to like a conference room where you're trying to get people together to work on something. Now that something has definitely changed from a physical space to a geographically distributed workforce. How do we get to that same level of alignment, same level of like somehow like we talk about, oh, magic happens when people get together. How do you make sure that magic happens across the world when you don't have your teammates right in the same room? That's effectively
Mhm.
the space. And think about it like all the way from starting an idea to making sure like that thing is shipped and like now in the hands of users. uh, like that's the whole spectrum or like that whole life cycle where a, a suite of products that Lucid offers can come to value.
Mm-hmm. So, Ruturaj, when we talk about Lucid Software, what's the end goal? Because what's the vision of the company as a whole? Because we see now they're tapping into different verticals, initially with the whiteboard, now with Lucidscale entering into how do you define the whole architecture of your cloud space, and now coming to the whole marketplace, which shows that the possibilities are endless. You can build tools on top of what the company has built and use
Yeah,
the features. So what exactly can we expect from Lucid Softwares in terms of in the visual collaboration space?
yeah. So I mean, think about it, right? So the way, at least like this is maybe like me drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit, but visual collaboration does feel like the future of work. Like we were just chatting a little before this, where maybe like having in person 5 days a week of working together might not be a reality for at least the distant future. Maybe we never go back to it. But like regardless of if the company is fully remote, they're hybrid, they meet some days, or like it's an in-person company, visual collaboration just as a means of doing work or like making progress on a concept and taking it to like a real thing, which is like shipping it, launching it. You need visual collaboration no matter where you are and no matter where you're located. So that aspect of it is great. Now, when it comes to like making sure that teams perform better together, like you can expect like really superior outcomes where you can actually be able to create that cohesively across the different ways in which people work. Now,
Mm-hmm.
with the world changing again so much, where geographically distributed teams is a thing, like you no longer have to be in the same country to work together, which is great. Like, so I no longer have to be at a specific, like, say, Bay Area was like the place to be for like a tech person. Now it's no longer true. As long as you can raise capital and you want to work on interesting ideas, you can do so from anywhere. Now, with that in mind, how do you make sure like we're going back to that magic to that collaboration piece, right? How do you basically adapt to like ways different people work? Uh, this is in a way to get alignment. This is make sure that we make progress. We don't waste time on like having hundreds of meetings to just get alignment on, oh, which are the three things that we really should be focused on. Can we make that better? Like, and that's why like that better has always been like get people in a room and like they'll figure it out. Now it's when it's not possible. Like, what is that room? Like, we're trying to like change what that concept of a room is. Uh, that's really, I think, where like Lucid Software and like not just Lucid as a company, but just the whole visual collaboration space is going to be very interesting. Where
Mm-hmm.
very like what workplace looks like COVID was a great like multiplier force when it really challenged. Okay, like because again, not going to lie, I had no idea that like I'm gonna have to stop working 5 days a week. Like that was the normal, right? Like I go into the office, I work with my colleagues, and like at certain point I leave. Just when that completely
Mm-hmm.
changed, it was like, okay, then how do we get work done? Uh, Humans figured it out somehow. Like that's why like COVID was actually a really amazing learning for us, and like we had to very
Yeah.
iterate very rapidly to like make a second product and the third one, and like, hey, let's just figure this out. Uh, it was a good forcing function, but like it definitely like opened our eyes towards like it could be something else. It doesn't have to be the 5 days sit in
Mm-hmm.
your office and making sure that you have to fly people out from all over the world to
Yeah.
make progress on something. Like it's just making things a lot more efficient, making sure that yeah, you don't have to maybe even like have that level of investment from a capital and a
Mm-hmm.
time perspective to make the progress that you want to. So like expediting workflows is great. Like yes, it's sometimes corporate talk that you're just making sure that work happens faster, better. Uh, but effectively like that's what we want to do. That's the space where I think that's where like this visual collaboration as a space is headed.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and whiteboarding is just a way, right? So why Lucid exists as a company, sometimes like that's where you start with like why do we do what we do in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
uh, I personally am a visual thinker. Like to me like reading through like 3 pages or like quickly having a small visual for it is helpful. Now like maybe a callback, like way back like in school we used to have these biology exams. There is a reason why I used to like start with a diagram and then like point out, oh, these are the things, and then like write 2 pages on it. But like to me, I always used to start with a diagram because like that just
Mm-hmm.
it's communicate an idea so much easier than like describing it. uh, show more like show me things rather than telling me things. It's like a design thinking principle. Like that's another side of me where that's something that I personally believe in a lot and like has helped me get alignment, get like people to buy into a vision. And I just like that's why like that's the style of work that I prefer. That's what like makes me more interested in doing the work that I'm doing here. Uh, and we're seeing a little bit of success there. Like we're getting more users. We're trying to like the kind of activity that's there is great, but there's a lot more potential. Like the
Mm-hmm.
nowhere, like it's still like an earlier like in terms of an area this hasn't been worked on for a while. It's now getting competitive as a space, like where
Yeah.
you're seeing like a lot of competitors, you're seeing a lot of really smart people trying to figure out stuff. Uh, so that's the part that is exciting. And I mean, like it was a brief visual, but like even with the Vision Pro video that they're
Yeah.
showing, like one of the work stuff was like on the left. There's like a whiteboard. I know. I think Apple has like this Freeform, which is a new product that they have, which is basically a
Mm-hmm.
whiteboard. just seeing a bunch of sticky
Okay.
notes, and I'm like, oh wait, there's that. So you never know. Like again, I don't think I've bought into the Vision Pro idea yet, but if that becomes a thing, like maybe like you still have to like get people to agree on something, to
Exactly.
work on something together.
But Ruturaj, something which really, from your answer, two things which propagated in my mind was first the competitive landscape which you were just mentioning. Post COVID pandemic, there has been surge in the kind of visualization tools in the market. Miro boards is there, used very extensively. Canva has got into the market of visual
Yeah.
collaboration. So
Hmm.
one question around this, which I really want this discussion to go forward, is how is the competitive landscape going future in the future, and how Lucidchart is differentiating itself from other competitors. And
Yeah.
secondly, the other topic of discussion was around Apple Vision Pro and the onset of technologies like AR, VR, 3D, as well
Hmm.
as artificial intelligence. So, how is the
Yeah.
visual collaboration going there? So, let's start first with the initial topic, that is, how is the competitive landscape currently, and how is Lucid differentiating itself in this domain?
Yeah. No, that is a great question, and like I'm glad you asked. But uh, again, competitive space, to me, that's what makes it fun. Like I would rather work in an area where there's a lot more attention, there's a lot more
Hmm.
investment going in, which keeps us Lucid as like Lucid in a way in this space. Like Lucidchart has been around for so long that it's a leader in the space of visual collaboration. But we can't keep talking about that and like the 60
Yeah.
million users that we have. Like we have Miro, we have Figma, we have FigJam as another one that's coming up. There's like I mentioned Freeform. So there's a lot of attention there, which means that there's competition, which means there's going to be like a lot more, I won't say scrappy, but like a lot more progress, which gets it exciting.
Hmm.
Now, in terms of like how Lucid would differentiate, first thing being like knowing the user and like this market for so long, like there is a certain advantage that you get where you have a head start over like just visual collaboration. But like with Lucidchart, which was maybe like a narrow set of users, which was slightly more technical users, who used to use like for flow charts and basically creating architecture diagrams, system diagrams, which are slightly process diagrams, which are a little more complex. Uh, Expanding that to like the whole knowledge workers, like any knowledge worker as a potential user, was a fantastic strategy move that the company had made. But with that expertise and like having like like a suite of products where we're not just going to help you in one process, but all the way, like when we say about like turn ideas into reality, like there's Lucidspark where you start with whiteboarding and like very quickly like get people aligned onto something. Then being able to like just still seamlessly be able to maybe dive a little deeper. So it's like, hey, you have an overview. Now you're trying to dive deeper into it, and let's get into like the nitty gritty details of it. Maybe that's the level that you work in a product like Lucidchart, where you can add that level of complexity and context with intelligent
Hmm.
diagramming is another aspect we say where there's a lot of integrations, there's a lot of automation that you don't necessarily always have to put in the amount of effort, right? So there's this that aspect of it. And then Lucidscale, a product like Lucidscale, and we'll likely have a lot more. There's a few other like products in the pipeline that are pretty exciting, like where I can't fully share, but some of the things that I can share around like visual activities. It's not a net new product, but it's part of Lucidspark or like
Yeah.
the whole suite experience where you can just basically get alignment. Where think about it, it's like a visual survey where you send out like you trying to like use a canvas space to get alignment quickly, where like your voting, your responses are all accumulated, and then you just
Hmm.
get an average view of like, hey, these are the three things that we really think we should be working on.
Yeah.
From a product prioritization perspective, right? You have like the value and cost aspect of it, like being able to get alignment quickly within like minutes rather than set like meetings with all your execs, which takes 3 weeks to set up, is powerful. But that's just like that
Hmm.
was very niche aspect of it. And then all the way going to like the reality part, right? Like a product like Lucidscale, like now helps you actually put that into reality where you can actually connect your instances all the way from like AWS, GCP, or Azure. Like these are the three things. I'm of course a little biased towards Lucidscale, given like I was very involved from the very
Yeah.
beginning there. But it's one of the like slightly more like deep, so a little bit of a vertical or a deep product that Lucid has, whereas Lucidchart and Scale are more like broader in nature. But like products like these then help us take it into like the reality aspect of it, right? So the whole suite of products, I think, is very powerful. And like even with some of the things that we're working on, which is we call it a universal canvas, where now you no longer have to use different products. It's still the same whiteboard. You just basically change like the stencil where, okay, you know what? I think I no longer have like want to be restricted to the simplicity of Lucidspark. Let's just add more detail and like flip that into a Lucidchart experience where then you can use the features that
Yeah.
Lucidchart has to offer, which to me is very interesting. If you're brought into like you're already there, uh, it just makes it a lot easier. But in terms of like differentiation, I think it's like that whole aspect of like all the way from the start to the end, like as much as we can. That's one way that you can differentiate. Some of the other aspect of it is like sometimes it's design. Sometimes how do we present these solutions where uh, you talked about like, okay, it's not as pervasive or like people don't usually think about it, which to me is a success of a product because I don't want a visual collaboration solution to get into the way. Because when I'm thinking about using like, I'm not even just saying like I work for Lucid, so I'll use Lucid products more, but like be it Miro, be it Figma, the success of these products is like honestly sometimes and as obtrusive as they can be, where you don't think that, oh, you have to, I'm going into like a Lucid Spark board to do something. Like it's just like if it becomes second
Very
nature, where like,
natural,
oh, I
yeah.
want to just put something together, I just go in there, use it, and get out. Like just the get in, get value, and get out aspect of it is beautiful. Where that's the kind of products you need to have in this space, where it's not in your face. It's not like, okay, now I'm going to go to Lucid, open a whiteboard, and go do something. If you can make like, if you can shorten that
Yeah.
process, that's success. And those are the kind of things that I'm trying to get to with like the marketplace and a little more like integrated workflows, right? Where it needs to be part of how you work to a point where you don't really think about it as, oh, this is now what I'm going to do. Sometimes like I think Slack is a good example where we didn't have Slack a few years ago, but now like, oh, I want to get something like I'll just always go to Slack to like get answers to something. You don't think of like, oh, I'm going to now open Slack. There's a lot of such products that we
Exactly.
use on a day-to-day basis where you're not really thinking about how they're doing or what they're doing, but once in a while you're like, oh, I like this feature, or like I like this has made my life a little better, or like by better I mean it's saving some time or helping me with something. I think that's where this space gets fun. And we're all trying to figure out how do we become the go-to place or like the go-to product that people use. And the competitive landscape aspect of it, I know, like again, pretty long answer, but the more deeply you fit into these workflows, I think the more likely these products are going to stick and be able to like show value beyond what a user like me would go into it expecting. Like I'm expecting it to do something, but what if it gives me a little more? And that little more needs to be like deeply integrated in the workflows. Unless it is, it's going to be challenging to like convince people that, okay, now you go do this one thing for value.
That's true. So as you mentioned, Ruturaj, so what key aspects I can take from how do we define success in this industry is what type of user experience can you provide? And if you can bundle the whole experience for the users so that they once they enter the platform, it should have multiple instances of what they're looking for in the solutions which they can provide. So as a product manager, how would you define success of a product while you're building something in Lucid software? What are some of the broader things which you look for? If we achieve this, then we can say the product is successful.
No, that's a great question. And because again, uh, with with a product like Lucid or like with Lucid suite of products, right? Given it is so broad that it can be hard to then like have like a single metric that you're thinking of. Like you always think through like engagement and like how much active users do you have, how often do users come back to your product is a very solid indication for any SaaS product where are they getting enough value that they keep coming back is usually like a standard one. But there are sometimes a lot there could be a lot of different aspects that you need to focus on when you're trying to understand, okay, what does success mean? And that's where like this design sort of principle of like, if you're designing for everyone, you're designing for no one, like, which is basically true, right? So when you're trying to be also focused on say like just Lucid Lucidschart or maybe say Lucidscale as one of the products, and like how do I measure success for Lucidscale? It's going to be very different from how I measure success from Lucidchart. Where sometimes for a product like Lucidscale, where all it does, or like by not all it does, but like it's visual collaboration or like basically visual reasoning, but cloud management, where the value that a product like Lucidscale provides is it automatically creates a visualization maybe on your build where like your Terraform was deployed and it has a viz ready for you if you need it. Just the aspect of like, hey, it's ready. If I click this one button and it's going to like show me exactly how things are laid out. Maybe a user might not even go and look into it every day, but the fact that it is ready on every deployment is value added enough from the product where I'm not even getting that product click or I'm not getting the user to log in, but I know that's adding value. Whereas for a product like Lucidspark, the value that I can quantify is always in like how often do they come back. And maybe making sure that like how often do they come back is not always like, so which is great, but it doesn't have to be like they spend like long hours of time in the product. Because in some products like a Facebook or an Instagram, like Instagram is incentivized for you to sink your time into it. Like you want to scroll as much as possible because I want to show you ads. But for a product like Lucidspark, maybe like your session time, maybe the shorter it is, sometimes it is better where, hey, if you can get alignment and a meeting in 10 minutes rather than spend an hour, I call that success. Now, how do we quantify that? That's another story altogether. So that's where a lot of like metric discussions are always fun, where like what is success? But like on a high level, I would say like engagement is still like a very important top line metric. Again, like sometimes like just the core bottom line of how much money are you making, how much like revenue do you have, the subscription aspect of it, how much churn are you seeing? Like why are people leaving? Why are people like wanting to join and like what are they trying to do? Like understanding that first and then making sure that we're solving those problems usually helps with some of these baseline metrics.
Yeah. So there's a lot to unfold in product management space in this industry, which we'll do in the coming time. But we'd also want to touch base on your background a bit, Ruturaj, because that's really exciting to see that you had a major in computer science and then you went to Georgia Tech for human computer interaction. And then you joined, and then you in Lucid, you were initially as a UI UX designer. So we would want to understand your initial days from computer science to HCI. How was the journey? What, if you can brief, what does people in HCI learn about and help people understand what exactly it is?
Absolutely. No, happy to do so. I'll briefly start with what my journey has been, right? So you mentioned I did CS. I was working as a full stack dev for the startup called Clairvoyant. Loved it, but very soon realized that I used to annoy my product manager and my UX designer a lot. We're like, hey, why are we doing this thing? Like, why is this experience laid out this way? That's where I learned that there is this field of UX and product management. Like there are people who have these jobs who work with maybe a little more on the user facing side. To me, that was a lot of fun. That was like more challenging. And very quickly, when I used to annoy them, realized I don't have the skill set. I don't know how to conduct research. I don't know how to like design. Like I did not have a design background. Like I did core computer science. So, but there was that like itch for like, okay, I want to see what this is like, to realize that I can't like internally just move and like start doing that work because I didn't have the hard skills. That's what led me to grad school. Now Georgia Tech happened because on a sidetrack, I'm a car enthusiast. Like my undergrad research was a little about like drivers and machines, like where how drivers interact with an automobile, which was okay. Very honestly, that's probably that research was why I got into the HCI program. Given it was very competitive. I'm not from like a IIT or anything, but like I think it's like some of those additional random weird things that I'd done which helped me get there. So Georgia Tech happened because I wanted to work for a specific lab to do some research that I did, as well as HCI as a field was very fascinating to me because to give everyone an overview, human computer interaction, if I were to like sum it up as like what it is about computer science, design, and human psychology coming together. So it's all about understanding how humans think, how humans behave, how just we as humans basically like live our lives, which to me is my favorite subject. Human psychology, fantastic subject. If you ever get into it, man, it's fun. But balancing that with how do you solve problems on a design level? How do you design solutions for those humans? And computing being like the other big aspect of it, because everything that you interact with these days is a computer. So that whole field is all about how do you make services, products, things that end like the end users, which are usually humans, unless you're just making stuff for like an LLM in the future. I don't know, man. But for that aspect, like how do you build products that actually humans can understand and use? Because that's the core of it, right? Like you're doing all this because you're trying to make human lives maybe a little better. Like yes, Silicon Valley spiel, but that's all what we're trying to do. So that's why that field was very fascinating. And as I said, like design was something that I was really interested in, and like I went super heavy into. I had been hearing from a lot of my professors as well as like some of my like colleagues or like friends that I used to do projects with were like, "Oh man, you'll be a great product manager." And at that time, I'm like, "I'm trying to be a designer. Why are you like, am I not going to be a good designer?" Like it was a very confusing at that moment. But that's why like I wanted to like design interactions. I wanted to design products. That's where it led me to getting an internship into it. Then I joined Lucid as a UX designer. Loved it. Like my first product that I designed like was somewhat like a precursor add-on to what then became Lucidscale. So my love for design was all about like I did not want to solve like just like technical scale and complex problems, which again, full respect, it's always fun, but I didn't get that much satisfaction in those problems. Then like, okay, let's figure out how this solution fits into a human's workflow. Like in their day, what are we doing? How does it fit into the big picture aspect, right? So that's what drew me towards design. And then from design to product, a little bit of like hearing from people that I might be good at it was like, okay, yeah, maybe let me look at it. And at Lucid, I got very lucky where at Lucid, like UX and product work really together. So like UX is assigned to a particular team or a product in the sense, and it was me and my group PM like working together even when I had a UX title to figure out what the hell do we do. Like, pardon my language, I should not say it, but like what do we do with this whole products area? So like getting that experience of building something 0 to 1 in that sense drew me towards, oh yeah, this is a fun space where you're getting involvement very early on and being able to like have, I wouldn't just say ownership, but exposure to like the whole life cycle of like when do you would start considering an idea into like, okay, can we make a business out of it? Can we make a product out of it? Taking it all the way through like releasing it with go-to-market efforts and then making sure that it's being sold well, that the company is making money out of the investment that is made. Like that whole end-to-end process to me was like the closest equivalent to learn how to run a business, which is my eventual like end goal. Like I have entrepreneurial aspirations. I want to one day start my own thing, and product management seemed like the right next move. I don't know what I'll be doing in the next 2 years, given like every few years I keep changing professions. But PM felt like home in that aspect where even when I'm like not an entrepreneur right now, it does feel a little bit like sort of trying to like figure out and like more than like run a business is really about learning how to run a business because of the exposure and like the interaction that I have to have with every function of the company. So that has sort of been that arc of where I am today.
Yeah.
And Ruturaj, like a very quick question here was, how does having a good design sense help you as a product manager? And the second question, just a short follow-up for that is, for someone who is an aspiring product manager, how can they build that basic product sense, which can help them in the day-to-day product management thing?
Yeah. So like product sense and like just like design sense in general, like design thinking as like a philosophy, like getting to know that better, I think is one of the core sort of requirements I think of when I think of product management. Because to me, like if I were to break it down, like what do I look for in early PMs? It's usually like, do they have like a decent design thinking background? Like, can they understand design? Can they have like, do they have data literacy? Do they understand data and can they make decisions on it? And do they have a business sense? Like, can they build business cases? Can they understand how a company might be built or how this product might fit into the rest of the world? With that, like it's one of the 3 pieces that I see. I don't expect everyone to be like an expert in all 3. I am not an expert in any of those, like maybe design a little bit. But the reason I bring that up is because I think it is one of the foundational pieces that does set you apart as a product manager. And by design, I'm also including like the user research aspect of it. Like understanding your customers is one of the core aspects of your job. What is your job as a PM? Like, yes, it is, to me, it's making sure that my team is working on the right things that make the biggest impact. But that impact is towards solving your customers' problems, which then is going to result in like a business revenue or the outright outcomes that you want. So you have to balance between business and user requirements. Sometimes they can be conflicting, but at its core, they shouldn't be, given that's how you build successful businesses. How will you know what your users, like your core users, want without having a deeper understanding of how do you even like ask those questions? How do you uncover the things that they are saying and the things that they're not saying, but like that basically the reading in between the lines that you have to do to connect between like, hey, this user said XYZ about a problem, but maybe that's not the solution, because you're not going to users for a solution. You're going them to understand your problem, their problems. That's where the design thinking aspect, like the early research and discovery aspect, comes in. Huge for a PM, because user researchers are there, designers are there to help you, but user research as a function is not like just UX's responsibility. As a PM, you need to be, if you are like solving users' problems, your customers' problems, you need to know your customer. That's why the design thinking philosophy, like that aspect of it, comes in. Now, the rest of the part of why design thinking is beneficial for me personally, like what brings me the most value is, now think about some of the work that I do is these days a lot with integrations and a lot of partnerships. In that aspect, like I'm evaluating opportunities a lot where, hey, like there's like 5 different partnerships that we can pursue, which one to go to. If I'm trying to build a business case for like, okay, maybe I want to select this X company, having the design skill set or like knowing when to involve my UX designer, like which is as early as possible, and like sort of painting the picture of like basically the art of possible sometimes is like very beneficial in the initial phase where like, hey, this is what it could be, because most of our jobs is communication. We're just trying to like paint a picture of what is possible. Then the business side where like a PM comes in very handy, which could be with business development folks, is why should we be doing this from like a business line? Like what does the company have to gain? What does the user have to gain? So building those cases, that's also where UX comes in handy, as well as all the way through the end life cycle, right? Like if you're learning only by shipping products, then you're investing way too much money. Like shipping products as a means of learning what you're building is the most expensive thing, and likely you've spent a lot of time. So de-risk, learn as quickly as possible. Like that skateboard thing that everyone knows of, like trying to build a car, like just build a skateboard and see. But that skateboard doesn't have to be code. That could be like a scrappy prototype. But being able to like de-risk and like get your customers as involved in what you're trying to build and what you're trying to learn really is massive when it comes to the investment that we have, because engineering resources are not cheap, and it takes time to build something like from the ground up. So having like the core design thinking skill set is really beneficial. Now, what that also helps is like with the change in mindset. Like when I moved over from computer science to design, one of the things that I really had to get through was the definition of done, right? Okay, I've solved this problem and I move on. Like, this is done and this is great and I feel good about it. And then with design, like nothing is ever done, which is also very similar to product. Like no matter how great of a product you build, like next week you're going to think, oh man, this is bad. We need to improve something. Being okay with that thinking of like, it's always iterations. It's always going to be a little better next time. Helps quite a bit when it comes to like, just go ship something. Just go like put something out there and like get feedback as early as possible. Like that shift in thinking, like I think design thinking has personally helped me a lot.
So that's very interesting point, and I actually wanted to understand from you, because whenever we talk about product management, it's again the intersection of those 3 circles where technology, business, and design sits in. And you have touched all the 3 circles. Now, as a PM, you are in the business space, I would say, and you have seen design, you have seen technology. So, can you give us one key differentiation in the thought process of someone who is an engineer, someone who is a designer, and someone who is in the product space? Like, what's the key mindset differentiation which you have seen in different phases?
Oh, absolutely. As an engineer, I wanted to solve a problem in the best possible way, which I feel proud about. That this is like, so think about it, like piece of code, like this is the most optimized, best way to solve this problem, and I feel good about it. Like that's the engineering mindset. I want to solve problem the best way. There's no better way. Like sometimes there could be, but like at least I have given it my all. As a design aspect, like no solution is good enough. Like I want to keep iterating. I want to keep designing something that is like, oh, this is perfect. And like, I know that's never going to be a case. So that's why, like, if from a designer's perspective, no product will ever be shipped. Whereas as a product manager, what you have to balance is a little bit of both. Where as an engineer, sometimes they're gonna have to like focus on like solving the right problems the right way, and that right way might be too expensive that like we just don't have the runway, you don't have the money to actually even like fund that team. Being able to balance that with like, okay, what we need to get something out, which is solving like big, with having the balance of the business needs, where we need to at the end of the day at some point make money so that like we keep the lights running. So like the business requirements is something that you are focused on, but you can't just be focused on that. And like so you're balancing that with, unless you focus on your users problems, you're not going to solve your business problems. So being able to balance between like what is good enough, what do we like, what can we learn as fast as possible to like then make something next. So that's why like I know there's like PMs very obsessed with shipping something, but like someone has to be. That's why like it's usually like the PM's job to make sure like, okay, what is the smallest set of things that we can release and put out in the world that we can learn from. That's usually the shift where yeah, as a designer, no product would be shipped. As an engineer, everything would be perfect and like will take a lot longer to build, which is not bad. Like, because like that, it's those sort of forces coming together which ends up making the best decision, right? Where like I am forcing my team to think about, okay, we have a quarter to deliver this. What's the way in which the engineering team lead is going to tell me like what's the best way that we can do in that time frame, and the designer is going to like try and figure out what's the best experience that we can de-risk with as many iterations, as many like feedback sessions as possible, so that we feel good enough. But as a PM, it's my job to make sure that that release happens, because otherwise it's going to take like a lot longer and maybe it's too late to learn from it.
Would love to know more about what are some tips and what are some recommendations you would give to someone who is a product manager to be successful at their respective jobs.
Like some things that I would like definitely want to like call out, which is an advice that I directly got from my CPO, was you don't need a job title to do the job. Like never forget that. Like, so no resources or like books or people like the three of us talking or like any product podcast is going to actually get you the actual exposure of like doing the work. So, and usually PMs are swamped. Like you guys are already interning. Like when you do a full-time job, you know, like there's always so much on your plate. It's not like a casual job. Like that's something that I want to be, make it very clear for everyone that's listening. So find, like basically reach out to your PMs. Like if you're working with a PM, like go reach out to them and like ask like if there are things that you can take off their plate and go do the work. Because like sometimes the perception of what a PM does and what the reality is could be different, and like go experience it and like know for sure if you want to do it, which I was lucky enough to get, where like I found mentors within my company who were doing product management, and then sort of gave me, and like also some of my colleagues who were open enough and like who were like kind enough and generous enough really to like just like share some of the things off their plate and like, okay, you go do this, own it, and learn while doing. So that aspect, like absolutely golden, and try and just do the role and see if it's for you, because it's not for everyone, and make sure you really want to do it. Then some of the things that we mentioned around like the transition aspect of it is making sure there is a difference between like learning to do the job and learning to get the job. And there are resources and things that are different for each of them. Like the doing the job to me is like the only way to really learn is to do the job. But then sometimes you have to focus on how do I even get in? And that's where some of the hard skills that we sort of talked about, right? Where maybe identify what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and then try and work on your weaknesses a little more. Where if we talked about hard skills, like you need business, you need data literacy, you need design. Maybe you come from a business background, you already are strong at it, but design and data, maybe you can work on it. So do that. You don't have to be an expert, but like being able to understand some of those basics does make you a lot better of a product manager. So that's something that I definitely value a lot. And you don't need to be good at everything. No one can. So like try and find your niche in some of those areas. Very helpful. Some of the things as like a PM, right? Like as a product manager, even as an early PM, like there is a board manager in there, and like even though you're not a direct people manager, like leadership is a huge aspect of it. These days I've been like a lot into it, and like I'm reading a little more resources, and like uh, being a leader is something that comes with this job. Like it is a leadership role even from the get-go, because yes, you're not directly, as I said, managing people, but
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have direct impact on people's careers, but it is about people management. Given if you want to get the best out of your team, like as we said, like if you have one scrum team, you have a few engineers, you have a QA, you have a designer that you work with, and you're trying to make something happen. Yes, your job is to focus on those business impacts and make sure they're delivering. But how do you do that is to make sure that the people on your team are performing at their best level. Some of the ways you can do that is to make sure that like the environment in that team is great, like that it's an open culture, like people are learning about things that they want to. Sometimes it is about finding the right opportunities for the right individuals and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that they are growing in the things that they are pursuing, which to me has been like somewhat of a recipe for success. We're making sure that the people on my team are actually enjoying and doing what they want to
Yeah.
learn and grow into. Usually they do phenomenal things that you
Mm-hmm.
don't imagine itself. So like your metrics are going to go way up. Like it's, and sometimes it's not always about that end business goal, but it's also about
Mm-hmm.
developing and making sure the people on your team have the opportunity to grow, because that's going to impact the work that the team produces, which is going to like directly look good on you,
Yeah.
because yeah, like you just did something pretty incredible with the set of people that you had. So to me, business is all about people, and like focusing
Mm-hmm.
on people and focusing on like the leadership aspect of it is important. And sometimes one advice that I give to some of the like not early, but like sometimes like sorry, like as you grow into the world of PM, right? Where sometimes your job becomes like get out of their way as much as possible. Like make sure you're setting the right vision, make sure you set the right sort of like end goal where hey, this is what where we think we should be going, and then just like stay out of their way and let them, meaning like some of the individuals on your team, like really grow and do things that like don't be prescriptive,
Yeah.
is something that makes a huge difference. So like one of the books that I read like a few months ago, which stayed with me quite a bit, is multipliers. Like try and become a multiplier in your organization, where uh, and which sometimes is like getting out of the way and trying to make
Yeah.
sure that you're finding the right opportunities, you're setting the right. So there is an aspect of like directionality, right? You can't just let, like you need to make sure that there's a clear goal, there is a clear vision, there is a clear way to inspire and motivate your teammates into like, why are we doing what we're doing? That
Mm-hmm.
so some of those messaging needs to be very clear. But like when that is there, some of the tactical decisions, some of the tactical ideas and things that can come up are just like could be way beyond what you have thought of. So your job is sometimes like not sometimes, it's never to be the smartest person in the room. It's usually just
Yeah.
to ask sometimes the right questions and make sure we are making the best decision,
Mm-hmm.
which sometimes is like listen a lot more than talking. I'm
Yeah.
trying to learn that myself. I tend to like talk quite a bit, but sometimes it's all about like
Mm-hmm.
just let's shut up sometime and like listen to what everyone is trying to say. uh, but at the end of the day, the decision needs to be made, and many times it's the PM that has to take the decision. So, like the
Mm-hmm.
last thing that like I would say in terms of like some of the PM advice that you're saying, right, is being decisive uh, is something that you also look for in early PMs. Like sometimes making the wrong decision is better than making no decision. Uh,
Yeah.
Give me some order rather than like just like no order. Like it's some
Mm-hmm.
of the famous quotes from like
Yeah.
actually this was probably from a interview that I was listening about like Sam Manekshaw, where like
Mm-hmm.
finally someone's giving orders, because sometimes in an organization that can be bizarre.
Yeah, no, that's very true. That as a product manager, being decisive and opinionated is something everyone has to, because in an organization, a PM plays a crucial role, and these are the qualities which basically drives the business. We really appreciate Rutraj you sharing all those amazing insights. I'm 100% sure these are going to help a lot of people, because we get a lot of requests where people are transitioning from design to product or engineering to product, and this episode will bring in a lot of insights for them. This officially brings us to the end of today's podcast. Hope you all enjoyed the conversation and our discussion has helped learn something new. Stay tuned for more such exciting episodes. Thank you so much for tuning into Product Unfiltered.